Hi, welcome to Best in Fest. I'm Leslie Lepage, the director of the La Femme International Film Festival, and this is a podcast for people who are interested in advancing their career in TV and film and learning all the dirty little secrets of Hollywood. Today, my guest is Judy Naidoo, and she is amazing. I just have to say, she's an alum of the La Femme International Film Festival, but she's a South African independent filmmaker, and she holds a master's in producing from the National Film and Television School, NFTS, in the United Kingdom. She is a multi-award winner. She created her first debut feature called Hatchet Hour, and that actually premiered at the La Femme International Film Festival and won Best Foreign Film there. She then brought back her second feature, Kings of Mulberry Street. We showed that. That was officially selected in 2020. But that has gone on to win so many other awards, as well as Hatchet Hour won so many awards worldwide. She also released in 2019 and won Best Feature Film at the Children's Film Festival in Seattle, Kings of Mulberry Street, and the Children's Foundation Award. She got that for that film for Best Comedy at the Buff Malmo Film Festival 2020 in Sweden. I hope I'm saying that correctly. But not just those two features. She is really a multi-award-winning director with numerous shorts. I can't even go on to name the amount of shorts she's created. Welcome, Judy.
Thank you for having me, Leslie.
The real crazy thing is, you know, you're a woman of color, and circling through and trying to promote your content is, I'm sure, a challenge, not only because, A, you're a woman, but then you're also speaking of different stories and bringing different stories to light. So can you talk a little bit about, you know, that experience?
Yes, when I started, which was many years ago, I actually had to find my way into feature film making because there wasn't really an avenue for female directors. And my passion has always been to direct films, you know. Producing, even though I have you mentioned all of my qualifications, thank you for that. But you know, I have a master's. I have a master's degree in producing, and that was not by choice. That was a means to an end. It was the only way I could possibly become a director, was to be able to create the avenues for myself and be able to raise the finance that I needed to make films. So, you know, I took the absolutely long road to this, but there was no other road to take. It was the only, you know, one left for me. So I had to become a producer, learn how to put finance together, and then be able to do the thing I love to do. And that was mostly because for women of color, and
which is being the filmmaker.
Exactly. And, you know, for women of color, especially back then, which is actually not such a long time ago, we're talking 2015 is when I made Hatchet Hour. And I was probably the second female person of color or woman of color to make a feature film. And that was not long ago. I mean, since then, we've made great strides in getting women to make a lot more films. But back then, it was just literally a handful of women. So it was a very long journey, and I probably it's taken a long time to get there, but you know, eventually with much persistence, you know, we did get there.
Yeah, and you know, successfully. You're a super talented director. Not to mention, you know, you've had to compensate your habit of directing by becoming a superior producer, right? Like most of us, we have to have we have to wear multi hats. We have to be able to do many things in order to get our products launched. So let's talk about that film financing element to your features. How did you go about getting your film financing for Mulberry Street, which is your most recent feature, compared to how you did it for Hatchet Hour, which was your first one?
On the second film, Kings of Mulberry Street, I actually wrote the script many years ago. So it was written in 2006. I did not believe at that time that anyone would be interested in a film about two little Indian boys growing up in the 80s in the place that I came from. And I initially wrote it as a short film. I did not write it as a full-length feature. And it was only many years later, when I had finished my master's and I came back to South Africa from the UK, I was unpacking and I took all of my stuff out of storage. I started looking at what I had put away because I'd forgotten. And then I found the short film that I made, and I thought, actually, this is not bad, and it would make a good feature-length film. So I then looked for development funding, and I was lucky that in Johannesburg, where I was living at the time, we have the National Film and Video Foundation that provides funding for the development of South African work, and I received development funding. That just happened, and now I call myself a writer, but then I never did, because I didn't know how to write, and I was relying on other people to do the work, and that is why it took I think another 4 years or something, trying to work with different writers. But because the work was so culturally specific, I could not find the right writer. And I eventually did realize I'm actually the right person to write the work. And then, then I sat down and I literally wrote it in 3 days. And, when I had finished, it felt like the story just flowed right out of me onto the page. And even though I went on to tweak it a lot afterwards, it was a very, very solid first draft. So, then, the writer in me came out in that phase. And then I had to have the courage to let that script go out into the world, because it's the most terrifying thing when you've written something and you've put a lot of yourself in it to now let it go. And I did, and I was lucky that once again, the Film Foundation in South Africa, the people who do the approvals, thought it was actually very funny, and I got comments back saying very rarely is something funny on the script in the on paper. Comedy is very hard to read, and they kind of approved my initial funding. So my initial funding was from the Film Foundation, and thereafter the other funding seemed to come in very quickly. I got regional funding, and then I went to a distributor.
How did that work?
So the regional funding is available for the region in which I live. And because, films for Black audiences and people of color in general is so limited, that there is funding now available in provinces so that people in those communities can actually have their stories told. So I was lucky that I am from KwaZulu-Natal, which is a province in South Africa. And I got the national funding, and then I got regional funding. And then our government has a rebate, which is like a tax incentive. And they provide you emerging Black filmmakers with an incentive, which is quite a significant amount of your budget. So I think I got 30% of my money through the rebate. And then there was a small amount of money that I had left to get. And that's when I approached our local distributor, and they loved the script and they came on, and it all happened very quickly. It was not like I had to really sell this. I think because there's so few comedies being made and so few films for family audiences, that, you know, this was something they were keen to pick up. So yeah, so that's kind of how it happened, but I was able to do it by myself, and it was, on this specific project, it was not a mission.
That in itself, I mean, just the speed of which you set that up is amazing. It means that, you know, the stars were shining down on you to make that happen, right?
Yeah.
But now you've got it finished, and now you're starting to look at continuing with that distributor, right? Was that distributor then locked in to take it through the festival circuit, or did you choose to take it independently through the festival circuit? How did that work?
The distributor that came in is our Africa distributor. So they distribute the entirety of Africa. But I still needed to get an international distributor. There's a Canadian company that literally, once I had finished once I had picture locked, actually it was completed. The film was completed. And it was around April 2019, I think. And once it was completed, I reached out to people I actually met on the festival circuit. So, you know, I met several festival directors that I befriended, and, you know, like, I knew them quite well, and I felt comfortable saying, listen, I just finished this film. I'm not sure how the world will receive it, but I would like to show it to you, get your feedback, and, you know, some of you might be interested in it for your festivals. And a lot of them did come back with very positive interest in the film, and a few did come back with suggestions on who I should approach as an international distributor as well. And it was through that means that we secured international distribution, and that also happened very quickly. I sent the message out on the 19th, and like 2 days later I had a response from a distributor, and like a week later we had signed a deal, because, you know, for South African films, it's very difficult to get an MG, and we were offered one for this film. And so it was a good sign. It was a good sign that that the distributor felt this film would work and would sell. So so that kind of happened quickly after we completed the film. So we have two distributors. We have one for Africa and we have one for the rest of the world.
For those that are listening in, she mentioned an MG. An MG is a money guarantee that is usually given up front by a distributor when they're really interested in the product, and they want to help close the contract. So they'll give you a percentage of your sales. Like if they think the film is going to make $300,000 in this particular territory, they'll give you a $25,000 or $50,000 guarantee up front. It's leaned against those potential sales, but that's what she's talking about.
Exactly.
That's pretty amazing, because currently, right now, distributors are not really forthcoming in money guarantees up front. So that's remarkable. Okay, so now you've got your distributors locked, and so was it the distributors that said, hey, listen, we should think about taking it through the festival circuit? Was that you're initiating this because you had already had very good successes on previous product going through the festival circuit? So how did that work out?
So from my previous experiences, I kind of knew the route to take. And so it was partially my initiative, but then I had an incredible local distributor, the Africa distributor, who really supports African filmmakers, and they really partnered with me in making everything happen. So Indigenous Films, which is the South African distributor, came on board. They partnered, they helped, because as a filmmaker, as an independent filmmaker, and like most filmmakers around the world, I do not have the money to go and, enter 20 film festivals. And I had to be very specific about the festivals I wanted to enter firstly. So, I did draft a festival strategy. The distributor brought on board a festival strategist who kind of confirmed everything, but also brought a lot of her contacts to the table as well. So between, the group of us, we managed to make a very solid festival list. And, thankfully we got into over 20 festivals now, and we still keep getting invited, even though the film's now 2 years old. So it was very helpful having them. And then also, the international distributor, because she deals with international sales, she would from time to time send us a message and say, I spoke to so-and-so, please send them your screener and whatever information they need. So it was a lot of collaboration and a lot of planning, but then also a lot of things were kind of just happening as the film gained traction and it was doing well and people were seeing it. Because I remember showing the film in Germany. That was our premiere. Our international premiere was in Germany, which our local distributor paid for me to attend. While I was there, I got approached by a festival in Italy. And the lady said to me, actually no, it was at Cinekid. I was at Cinekid. And the festival director said, I watched your film in Germany and now I'm in the Netherlands. I'm watching your film again. I want your film to screen at our festival in Italy. And so, the film kind of just found a life of its own, and it started kind of finding its way through the festival circuit, through word of mouth.
When you have that kind of perfect storm, it's so nice to ride, into festival to festival to festival when you have such a solid word of mouth, So you were very lucky. Now, where does this leave you? I know you're still getting invited, and we still are, the world is still in the land of COVID, and we are still post-COVID, and film festivals are virtual, and some are going back on ground, and some are hybrid, really according to their local governments. Where are you now on that festival circuit? You're winding down on this feature. Are you now focusing your efforts to a new feature? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, well, before I tell you about the new feature, I must say, even though it seems like everything went very well with this film, and for the most part, when it comes to festivals and having a great festival run, we did. However, the challenges came when actually trying to sell the film. And, it was quite shocking for me, because I won't mention kind of festivals by name, but I will just say I was at a festival. The film was, we were trying to sell the film there, and it was taking forever for a commitment, and it was, even though we had sold out, and then mind you, we had sold out that festival, they added, and this has happened at numerous festivals in Europe, where they added on screening venues and time slots because the film was being well received. And yet we were struggling to sell the film. And, so eventually I just asked the question, what is it about this film that is making people hesitant to buy? And the answer that came back is that it's too ethnic. Now, here's the thing, is like, what the hell is too ethnic? And I'll tell you what the problem is.
Right, yeah, what does that mean?
The problem is there's not enough white people in my film. There's one white person in the film, and that was problematic. And this is the truth of the matter, is that you can have a brilliant film, but if people find it does not please their requirements, whatever it is, because, they are probably justified in saying that their audiences don't want to watch a film with lots of Indian people in it because they can't identify or can't relate, then it's problematic. But as filmmakers, we keep saying to ourselves, we are making films for the entire world because stories travel. It is a universal thing. We all share the same heart and mind, and we all identify with love, with sorrow and pain. These are universal things. But some of the decision makers won't allow that to happen because, they have their own agenda. So it was not that easy. Although the film has sold in several territories, it was difficult to actually kind of find its way into being bought.
That's interesting because that brings me to a question of, are you seeing enough change in representation of people of color, of products with people of color in it, or created by people of color? And to hear this story from you really goes to show that, no, we are not making drastic enough changes. If you're still getting comments of, well, how is this film, meaningful for a universal audience? I mean, listen, anyone who's listening in who can grab a hold and see this film, it is a lovely, sweet, funny, wonderful family film. I mean, it is an awesome family film. Just happens to be with non-white people. But the concept and the story, the directing and the acting are all spot on. But going back to this question, are you still finding continued, even though we have these waves of, supporting other points of view out there in the world of entertainment, are you still up against that brick wall?
I think so. I think with each film I make, I'm trying to kind of question representation of how we are being represented. My first film did not have a single Indian person in it, and was a conscious decision. I did not want to be seen as that, Indian director that makes films about Indian people. It happened that the funding for that film came together first anyway. So that film it was its time, it happened, And then, when Kings of Mulberry Street happened, I wanted to represent Indians in South African context because the world has not seen stories from this world. This world, the entire world, I don't think has heard a South African, or they don't know what a South African Indian sounds like. An Indian from the UK might sound British, or they might sound like they are from India. But, South Africans sound different. We have a different lingo, our colloquial words, and it's very much a mixture of South African languages and culture. It's a very different world. And I thought, by representing that, it was needed and it was time. But the more I look into the stories that are now currently being made, I don't know whether the world wants to see third world Africa, poverty and suffering, even though that is our reality. There is much more to us than just that. And, also representing Indian communities. In South Africa, I find the work quite stereotypical, to be honest. I find, sometimes I think, we're so much more than this funny-speaking people who are quite naive, in the representation that's out there. So I'm trying in my work to question it, to kind of elevate the representation. And it's challenging because not everybody wants to see that. People want to see what sells. And sometimes the stereotypical work does sell. I can tell you now that it's, some of the most successful films in South Africa are actually films that are incredibly stereotypical.
So it goes back to it's just not changing fast enough, right? I understand that. I think the reason Kings of Mulberry Street has had the success it has, because it does, in a, how can I say, it does represent the community, but it does it in a way where it's not off-putting. It is lovely and sweet and funny and entertaining, and it doesn't come off, it's not stereotypical for sure, but it doesn't come off as off-putting either. So I think the blend of what you created with that was quite special. So congratulations to you on at least achieving that, and I think you just have to keep going up against that brick wall and fighting it. Which leads us to our, what are you doing for your next feature? What is your next feature that you're putting your energy towards?
So I have a few things that are lined up. While we were in the midst of COVID last year, I finished a film which is a natural disaster film. It's actually a drama set against a natural disaster, which I completed last year and hope to go into production next year. And I am currently writing the sequel to Kings of Mulberry Street. Because I think, when I wrote the first one, I always had it in my mind that it was going to be a two-parter. The first one was going to be in the 80s before we had democracy. And the second was going to be when we did achieve democracy. So, I think, the second one's, it's been fun so far.
With the characters growing into that, aging into that new era?
Yeah, so same world of the story. Well, the world's more broader now. We kind of include a lot of new elements to it. And I think this one's a lot more fun. The kids are grown up, and it's a different stage in their lives, and a lot is happening. I think the comedy will get a bit crazy on this one.
I can't wait. You're gonna have to bring it back to us because I can't wait. I can't wait to see it, and I'd love to see the one that you're working on, which is the natural disaster as well. I'm sure that's gonna put a very shocking light on the characters that you're creating. Two last questions. First one, what piece of advice would you give young women of color filmmakers out there that you wish you had been given?
It's such a difficult journey being a filmmaker, and there are many times I have asked myself, why am I doing this? It's you never do it for the money, because really the money is never guaranteed. You sometimes you put your own money into it, but I would say don't wait for somebody to, because it took me a long time to realize this. It took me actually longer than I should have realized it sooner. But I think the answer to your question is, don't wait for somebody to offer the opportunity to you. Create the opportunity for yourself. If that had just dawned on me earlier, I think I would have done everything a little bit quicker. But everything happened in its time, and maybe because I needed to mature for that to happen. But I think don't wait for somebody to give you their approval. If you know you have a good story and you have some means, and these days it's not that difficult to create these videos. I mean, there's so many platforms. Just start making films. Start making it, start putting it out there. The more you make, the more you learn, the more mistakes you make, the more you will learn. And I've learned the most out of failing a lot, and I still do. I still fail a lot.
Well, as long as you're learning from it, then you're better off than most. I want to thank you for coming on Best in Fest and telling us and giving us your viewpoint on filmmaking. Thank you all for listening in to Best in Fest. We were listening to Judy Naidoo, and she's coming to us from South Africa. For those that want to submit their film to the film festival this year, go to Film Freeway and search on La Femme International Film Festival, or go to lafemme.org. And don't forget to like us on the podcast, wherever you are listening to the podcast. Also, it will be on our YouTube channel as a video version of the podcast. So shout out to us on that, or shout out to us on Instagram, Twitter, at La Femme Film Festival, and don't forget to rate us on iTunes. I want to say thank you, Judy, again. Do you want to shout out any of your social media handles to any of those listening in?
Yes, if you're interested in Kings of Mulberry Street, I think it is streaming in the US on certain platforms. Unfortunately, I don't have that information on hand, but you can follow us on Facebook. Kings of Mulberry Street, and on Instagram it's Kings of Mulberry Street Movie.
Excellent. Thank you, Judy, so much. And bye-bye to all those listening in to Best in Fest.